Charles, it's Chic. But how would you know that?
Riverdale is finally back with new episodes, and the Southside Serpents are heading to Riverdale High while Betty's brother Chic comes to town. Let's break down Season 2, Episode 10, right here on What Happened. Hey everybody, Lisa here, and at long last, new episodes of Riverdale are gracing 2018. This episode introduced us to two new characters, Betty's long-lost brother Charles Smith, aka Chic, and Agent Adams from the FBI, or so he says. We also have Southside High suddenly closing, and yes, it's all because of the lodges, and they want the land the school sits on, and of course, Veronica is in on it as well. What about the mystery of the Black Hood, though? Well, as we all thought, it may not be over, as Archie expresses towards the end of the episode that he feels like they got the wrong guy. So who could it be? In the most predictable reveal, all signs are pointing to Chic, who's just plain creepy from the start. Like, seriously, creepy vibes. And if you didn't get creepy vibes, I think you need to fix your radar. Now, everyone seemed to call it from the beginning of the whole Black Hood saga that it would be Chic, but I wanted to hold out and not believe it, because let's just be real here. Too damn obvious, right? Like, I feel like a blind person could have figured out that it would be Chic. I just remembered that, the whole copycat Black Hood thing, they said that there were two different handwritings from the two different Black Hood notes. So is Chic that copycat? And if he's the copycat, then who was the real Black Hood? Could that have actually been Joseph? That's enough for that rant, so let's really just recap this episode.
Here we go!
Southside High has been shut down all of a sudden, and all the students are being transferred to different schools in the district. Conveniently, the Serpents we know, Jughead, Tony, Fogarty, who they call Fangs, and Sweet Pea are heading to Riverdale High. So why did Southside close all of a sudden? We learn it was because of a deal the lodges made with the mayor, and yes, Veronica is in on it. The school is close to the Soldale project, and the lodges want to buy the land the school sits on. In return, they're giving the mayor a sizable donation. Veronica's job is to basically keep the peace at school and make sure the transition goes very well and no one revolts. Unfortunately, things don't go so smoothly. Veronica tries to enlist Archie, Kevin, and Josie to help welcome the Southside students to Riverdale, but Cheryl, Reggie, and some of the other students don't want, quote, the Southside scum invading their school. Jughead also isn't too thrilled to be there because he felt like Southside was a place they could call their own and it was like a home. When Reggie frames the Serpents for vandalizing the school's seal, Principal Weatherby bans all gang paraphernalia. Jughead's upset by this and refuses to take off his serpent jacket and gets suspended, but he's left all alone because Tony and the others, they're not mad about having to take their jackets off for school hours if it means they're at a better school with basically better resources. Jughead, though, feels like being a serpent is part of his identity, and it's in the rules that, you don't take your jacket off or shed your skin, and he doesn't want to do that. But he gets some fatherly advice from FP, who tells him that serpents hibernate, so he just needs to deal with everything that's happening and lie low. Jughead agrees with his father's point and returns to school to find that Veronica has convinced her parents to make a donation to get uniforms for the Southside kids who may not have Riverdale High appropriate attire. Jughead, being the smart boy he is, has a solution for this whole serpent problem. He gets Principal Weatherby to approve of a club called Swords and Serpents, which is said to be a gaming club, but it's basically a safe haven and a cover for the Serpents that they can meet and kind of feel at home, have their own place at Riverdale High. Moving on, remember how Cheryl told her mom to get a job and we last saw Penelope basically screwing Santa Claus? Well, she's found a job. It's basically comforting the lonely men of Riverdale, or pretty much prostitution. It's no surprise that Cheryl does not approve of this, and she also does not approve of the Southside High students coming to Riverdale. She pretty much blackmails Archie to get on her side about the issue by threatening to tell Veronica about the kiss between him and Betty. Cheryl's storyline then intertwines some more with Archie's, which I'll get to in a bit, but essentially Archie gets her a new check from Nick St. Clair, and she gives it to Penelope and says, you know what? We got money now, you can quit doing that job. Well, unfortunately for Cheryl, Penelope's just having too much of a good time to stop. All I want to know is, why didn't Cheryl just keep the check and deposit herself and then tell her mom they have money now? Because her mom is pretty awful. I feel like Cheryl would have her own bank account, and she already knows she can't trust Penelope. What was Cheryl thinking? Just keep the money for yourself, girl. Now let's talk about Mr. Archie Andrews and his new pal, Agent Adams. Fred asks Archie if he knows anything about his medical bill being paid off, and they basically figure out eventually that it was the lodges who had something to do with it, since Archie did mention it to Veronica. Archie is also still being followed by someone who is taking pictures, and we learn, or so they make us think it's Agent Adams from the FBI who Archie meets on his way home. It just so happens that Agent Adams was born and raised in Riverdale, and he's been assigned the Hiram Lodge case because they believe he's conducting criminal activity in Riverdale and has ties to organized crime. Agent Adams basically wants Archie to help in taking down Hiram, and his first assignment is to find out if Hiram had anything to do with Nick St. Clair's accident. Before agreeing to help, Archie attempts to see if he can squeeze any kind of information out of the lodges at dinner, maybe catch him in a lie. So he asks them how they feel about Southside closing and then about Nick's accident. All the answers just seem to make Archiekins more suspicious to what Agent Adams told him is right, so Archie agrees to help as long as Agent Adams provides protection for Fred and eventually Veronica, to which Agent Adams agrees. Now, after Cheryl tells Archie she knows about the kiss between him and Betty, Archie claims, well,
We were on a break!
he then asks her about Nick St. Clair and how he thinks he's going to go talk to him. Cheryl just says she wished she hadn't burned up that check and mentions that Nick also assaulted Veronica, to which Archie had no idea about, and now he's even angrier. He meets with Agent Adams later, and Archie's kind of worried that if he goes to see Nick, that Nick may tell Hiram or someone who knows Hiram and it'll get back to him. So they agree that he needs to come up with a cover story. So Archie decides to use Cheryl as his cover story, and he goes to visit her and tells her, hey, I'm gonna get you another check from Nick. All I need is Jason's blazer. Archie then pays a visit to Nick's dorm room at Greenwich Prep and demands that Nick write another check for Cheryl, which he's okay with. Well, Archie eventually asks Nick how he got hurt, and he just insists that it was a skiing accident, but Archie doesn't seem to be buying it. And we know that Nick is a scumbag, but he's also a smart scumbag, and he knows why Archie is there, and it's about Veronica. So he warns Archie not to get too deep in with Veronica because she will turn on him in a second and blood will be shed. But Archie, this sets him off, and he just starts wailing on Nick. Unfortunately for Archie, Nick did text Veronica about the encounter, and she confronts him, and she keeps asking who told him about Nick. Cheryl conveniently happens to be walking by and eavesdropping, as she usually is, and covers for Archie, saying she told him and apologizes for betraying Veronica's trust. At Pops later, Veronica still thinks Archie is hiding something because, let's face it, Archie is a bad liar. He says he left something out when telling her what happened, and no, he doesn't rat out that he's working with the FBI and he's suspicious of her. Instead, he comes clean about being blackmailed by Cheryl about the kiss with him and Betty. She just ends up telling Archie it's okay, and after they have their little makeup sex session, Archie asks Veronica who else she told about the Nick incident at the party, and she just says Cheryl and Kevin, but it seems like Archie also knows that Veronica is lying. So they're both very suspicious of each other, and this is totally going to blow up on one of them in the future. Later, when Archie meets Agent Adams again to report what he's learned and to ask for Veronica's protection, he asks Agent Adams if they think they caught the right guy when it comes to the Black Hood, since he knows Agent Adams has been following him around for a while, so he has to know about the case of the Black Hood. We don't hear Agent Adams respond, but Archie expresses that he thinks they got it wrong, and then Jughead's narration teases that Archie is taking another step into darkness. And I kind of feel like I could do with some more Dark Archie. The last big storyline is the arrival of Charles Smith, aka Chic, Betty's brother. Betty ends up seeking out Charles in an attempt to cheer her mother up, since Polly has basically cut all ties with the family at the request of the farm, which is basically the cult type thing that she's gone to live at. And she's had her twins, but Betty only learned about the birth of the twins because she found Polly in the house packing up some of her stuff. Now, if you are curious about the twins' names, it's Dagwood and Juniper. Betty just doesn't have the heart to tell Alice the truth about Polly having the babies and not calling her, so she goes to ask Jughead for his social worker's number because she wants to track down her brother. She thinks that maybe that will help fill the hole that Alice will have about Polly being gone. Betty learns from the social worker that her brother's name is Charles Smith and he was never adopted, so he always stayed in the foster system, and the last known address they have for him is 2 towns over. Betty then goes to her parents and comes clean about the whole Polly situation and reveals that she found Charles, but Hal gets upset and doesn't want anything to do with finding him. And Alice, she agrees just so that Hal doesn't get more upset, but she doesn't mean it because she creepily sits on Betty's bed in the middle of the night, waiting for Betty to just wake up, which is not weird at all. and she says that she wants to go find him. They end up at a seedy motel and find Charles, who surprisingly already knows who they are. It turns out the sisters gave him their address when he turned 18, and he did drive by once, and he compliments their house, and you can tell he's kind of got this chip on his shoulder as he tells Betty she's lucky they wanted her. He then tells them that he goes by Chic and they gotta leave because he has a client coming over and he works in fantasy fulfillment, as he calls it. Looks like he has something in common with Penelope Blossom. We then see Betty comforting Alice, who is bawling her eyes out in the car in a heartbreaking scene. Back at home, Betty looks at the box of stuff to throw away, and her creepy-ass baby nightlight that she saved from Polly earlier in the episode is in it. Now, for some reason, seeing it inspires her to return to Chic's place, where she walks in on the middle of him in a fight with the guy in the hallway, and it looks like he suffered some knife wounds. She manages to get him away from the guy and takes him home, and Alice and Hal actually help clean him up and grab the first aid kit and give him a room to sleep in. Now, all seems fine with Chic here until he rolls over and we see him stare at that creepy baby nightlight. And somehow, this creepy nightlight is inspiring to this family. I don't know why anybody would want that as a nightlight in the first place. He ends up getting up in the middle of the night and walking to Betty's room and standing in the doorway at first, and then he just hovers over her bed as she sleeps. So she's basically let another monster into their family, as it's said in Jughead's narration. Here's the thing, Betty woke up so easily when her mom sat at the edge of her bed not even looking at her. How come she didn't wake up when this creepy, dark, shadowy figure stranger dude is literally staring at her, hovering over her face in bed? Alright, that wraps up the main plot points of this episode. A few other little things to make note of. It seems like Alice is convinced that something shady is going on with Southside High closing so quickly, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be her next article. Archie also mentions he wants to start a band, which I think is a nice nod to the Archies, who could maybe form at some point on the show this season. And I feel like there was some chemistry between Kevin and Fogarty, aka Fangs. Now, I have to say, this was an interesting episode. We had a lot of things happening, but it felt nice to kind of be free of the Black Hood saga for the majority of the episode. And I'm glad it finally brought all of this Hiram Lodge, Industries, all that weird, shady business back to the forefront, because it was just kind of sprinkled throughout the first half of the season, and I honestly kind of would forget about it at most points. Now, FBI agent Adams, I'm not sure if he really says who he is. As we've learned from watching Riverdale, you can't really trust anybody in this town. So is he legit? Is he maybe working with the lodges? Is he working for someone else? Could he be the real Black Hood? Could he be working with the Black Hood? Now, if Chic Cooper is the Black Hood, hopefully they give us some backstory as to how he pulled everything off to make this a little more interesting, because right now, I'm really not too excited about Chic becoming the Black Hood or revealing he's the Black Hood. I'm more interested in him trying to, fit into this family, but of course they had to give it that creepy feel, and as a viewer, Chic gave me creepy vibes immediately, even before we got to the end of the episode when he shows his creepiness. So I'm hoping that if he comes in contact with any of Betty's friends, the other characters on the show, that they'll immediately get creepy vibes too and maybe warn Betty. As far as my favorite performance from this episode, I gotta give some love to Machen Amick as Alice. I mean, I love seeing sassy and bitchy Alice, but I also really love seeing the softer side of Alice, and we got that in this episode. Like, that crying scene, even though we had no sound and it was super short, it just broke me up inside. And the arrival of Chic, I'm hoping that we're going to learn more about his past, and maybe that will lead to learning more about Alice's past as well. But I also don't want Alice to get hurt, which it seems like she probably will if it turns out that Chic is the Black Hood. Now, let's get to the promo for next week.
You're not good enough for my daughter.
Do you know what you've let into our house?
I don't like being manipulated by a lodge.
There's a darkness in me I don't understand.
It's like there's nothing I can do to earn his respect. It's personal now.
I always win.
Alright, so what did you think of this episode? Do you think Chic Cooper is really the Black Hood or just a creepy stalker? Agent Adams, is he really who he says he is? And will the serpents be able to lie low at school? Leave me all your thoughts in the comments down below, all your new theories, and then you can check out more of my videos right over here, including my recent interview with Cheryl Blossom herself, Madeleine Petch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.